Hello, and welcome to Odds Premier League Match Day 1. We are back in the season 25-26, of course, with Tom Rennie with me to analyze this new season in the Premier League. It looks very exciting. Tom Rennie, I'm happy to have you back here. Hello.
Yeah, match day 1. It rolls around, doesn't it? The summer feels like it's going to be forever, and then suddenly it's not. But it's been a great one this year because the football has never stopped, right? With the Club World Cup and the Women's European Championship for us, and obviously Gold Cup people have had. It's been constant, and the world's a better place for it. But now the good stuff is back from Friday.
Probably only a couple of weeks with no football, so there was no summer. We can say there was no break. Some teams like Chelsea, for instance, couldn't have a break. But well, for football fans, this is good. For betting fans, this is also good because we have plenty of things to bet on. So guys, stay tuned. Of course, if you enjoy our videos, don't forget, press the like, subscribe. I'm looking forward to hearing Tom Rennie's prediction this season. Is Liverpool going to win the title again? Let me ask this question to Tom in a bit. Let's go on with the show. Because last season, Tom, I think when we started the season, no one had any doubt that the Man City were the favorites. They were winning Premier League after Premier League. They looked sharp. They had Haaland, of course, scoring plenty of goals. But this season, I think everything is really open. We have Liverpool, current champions, as favorites, 2.75. We have Arsenal second, 3.5, with 𝐿𝐿𝐴, as we know, adding up to the team as a number 9. And then Man City third, 450, the odds to win the trophy. Do you agree with these odds is my first question to you.
Yeah, I think that top 3 is about right, actually. I think that the way Liverpool won the league last season in such a dominant fashion, you'd have to make them favourites just 2 months down the line. But we saw in the Community Shield on Sunday that there's going to be significant changes with Liverpool this season. Florian Wirtz makes them a totally different team, and he's so good. You build the team around him. Mo Salah, another year on. Do you rely on him as much as they did? Frimpong and 𝐿𝐿𝐴 at fullback make things different. So, look, I think Liverpool are going to be different, and that maybe drops them slightly down the rankings a bit for me. Arsenal being second favourites, look, I think that this has to be the year that Mikel Arteta delivers the Premier League title, or I think it's time for Arsenal and him to part ways. The pressure on him is massive. And Man City, if you look at them across the last 8 years, when they've been at their best, that's because Kevin De Bruyne has been the best player in England, at points the best player in Europe, and he's now a Napoli player. So how do they recover from the loss of their best player more or less of the last decade? We'll find out together. I think the order's about right, and if I'm tipping this morning, I would still go for Liverpool, because if you add Florian Wirtz to the champions, surely you get better, not worse, but we'll see.
Well, let's see. Even Arteta said in summer that perhaps there are 8-9 candidates to win the trophy. I don't think so, but some people put Chelsea into the mix. Of course, the world champions. So, well, Tom, let's go down to the business and let's break down all the teams. The first game we have unveiling this Premier League is on Friday, Liverpool-Bournemouth. We saw Liverpool already in a competitive game last weekend at Wembley in the Community Shield, although you always say is a glorious, friendly game, and they lost to Crystal Palace, but we saw some signings. It's a new Liverpool. Of course, the manager is still the same, but we have Florian Wirtz, you mentioned, Frimpong, 𝗵𝗵𝗍, so they basically changed half of the team. Alexander-Arnold is out, Luis Diaz, Núñez, a lot of work in the upper floors in Anfield, and we have Bournemouth with a lot of problems in defense. They sold basically the whole defense, so it's a lot of questions for Iraola, a team that worked really well last season, but of course with no defense it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah, I think those Bournemouth sales could be really significant. We'll get to that in a second and start with Liverpool, because I think the back end of the season last season was tough. I think they won the season so easily. They won the league so easily. You saw a bit of the drop-off in the Carabao Cup final. You saw a drop-off in the last few weeks of the season. And why not? They were basically already champions. So you can see why Arne Slot, who'd taken Jurgen Klopp's squad and built it into champions, he has gone, right, okay, that was great, but now we've got to make serious changes. And the signings make a lot of sense, what they've done. We spoke a bit about Florian Wirtz already. I think he is just extraordinary. He's an incredible footballer, reads the game like nobody else, drifts on the ball, scores goals, everything. He is a near complete footballer. And I spoke to a Bayer Leverkusen fan a few days ago at the Chelsea-Leverkusen game, who basically told me he is irreplaceable. And he didn't think Xabi Alonso was irreplaceable. He didn't think any other player they've sold was irreplaceable, but he did think Florian Wirtz was irreplaceable. So really excited to see him and the way he works in this Liverpool team. We saw little bits of that in the Community Shield on Sunday. I think it'll only get better when they all get used to each other. 𝐿𝐿𝐴 is a good player as well. Excellent ball control for someone so tall. And we saw already at the weekend an amazing eye for goal. And you've seen it, of course, in Eintracht Frankfurt as well. So they're really good signings. I think that even though I think 𝐿𝐿𝐴 and Frimpong are good players, I think that to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson and what they brought to Liverpool over the last 8-9 years or whatever it is, that's a huge step for both of those players, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know how much of a fullback Frimpong is, and I think Andy Robertson, incredibly undervalued player. He's been elite during his time at Liverpool. He might be past his best now, so they've made the change, but going to be a big step up for the new man at fullback. So really interesting how they play. I think it's going to be really interesting what the system is going to be. Really interesting how they utilize Mo Salah this season, who basically got a free pass defensively last campaign. So is he going to get that this season? We don't know. Plus, not going into this weekend, but maybe next week or the week after, throw in Alexander Isak into this mix as well. And if that happens, I think I'd make them huge favourites to win the title, but we'll see how that goes. So at home, they're usually imperious. Still got Virgil van Dijk, though he looked a bit slow, I thought, at the weekend. Still need someone, I think, alongside him. With the sales they've done, it's only really 𝐿𝐴 and Van Dijk available. So still a bit to do defensively. A little bit open at the weekend, which will concern the manager. And Van Dijk, at his age, at his kind of speed, there is someone you can maybe get out there for the first time in some years. We'll see how that plays out. In terms of Bournemouth, I mean, last season, spectacular, right? We all thought they were really, really good. But we praise these clubs because we all live in the real world and selling well is important, but you can't sell 𝐿𝐴 Dean Howson, and Milos Kerkez, and they lost Kepa Arrizabalaga as well, who've been on loan from Chelsea. So, of their back five, including goalkeeper, the two centre-halves, the fullback, and the keeper's gone. And, I don't know about 𝗛𝗏𝗄 they just signed from Lille. I mean, I know who he is, but I don't know how he's going to settle in. We'll find that together. But they need more players than what is currently in Bournemouth. And Andoni Iraola is obviously a good coach, and he got really good performances from players who are not usually at that level consistently. I'm thinking about Kluivert and Semenyo and one or two others. Is he going to be able to do that again? Let's hope so. But going into this game, I'd have lots of concerns about the lack of depth in this Bournemouth squad. So in terms of the game, obviously go Liverpool win at 1.31 as your top tip. I do think Bournemouth will score a goal here. Because of the defensive deficiencies we mentioned at Liverpool, but also the offense at Bournemouth remains the same. We'll take Liverpool win and both teams to score at 2.5. You can take a lovely group bet here, which brings you in at 4 at 2-1, 3-1, and 4-1 bundled together. 4 is really nice for 3 very likely scorelines. Certainly 2-1 and 3-1 I really fancy. And 𝐿𝐴 anytime was 1.91. You double that with the Liverpool win, and that's going to double your money.
Amazing summer for Liverpool, amazing signings, also getting rid of Luis Diaz for a good amount of money, and Darwin Núñez was good business, and perhaps, who knows, they might add Alexander Isak before the transfer window closed. Talking about Alexander Isak, let's go to the next game. We have on Saturday, we have Aston Villa, Newcastle. He's been apart from the team the whole summer because he expressed his willingness to leave the club, but they are not finding him any club at the moment. So he's staying at Newcastle, and they only have added Elanga as a big signing this summer. Remember, they are playing Champions League, but the squad doesn't seem too strong or stronger than last season, especially if they are going to lose Isak. same can be applied for Aston Villa, Tom. It was a great season. Last one, they lost Rashford or Asensio. Of course, they were on loan and they left the club. Emi Martinez said, yeah, I'm going. No, I don't find the club. Now I'm back. But not many signings from both sides. I think a bit of a question mark, right? These really exciting projects, but we expected, I think, that they would sign more this summer.
Yeah, I think that's the right analysis. I think that both of these squads look undercooked as we go into the first weekend of the season. I expect plenty of moves from both over the next couple of weeks. I think it's tougher for Villa than it is for Newcastle. Of course, Villa didn't make Champions League after that controversial final game of the season. And so they are finding it tougher in the market. You know, when you look at across Europe and around the world, players want to go Champions League, then they'll go Europa League, and then they'll go to Conference League, and then they'll go to the Premier League, and then they'll go to Serie A or whatever. But that's the kind of order of things, right? And the Champions League clubs move first, and that means Newcastle, that have struggled, have been able to move before Villa. But Villa have obviously got some quite significant financial balancing to do as well, which has kind of tied their hands behind their back as well. I think they were trying to sell someone like Ollie Watkins, bring some money in, reinvest in the squad. Not been able to do that. You mentioned Martinez, you know, they thought they'd get that wage bill off and bring someone in for maybe less money. Not been able to do that. But look, away from the lack of business so far, it's still a very, very good team, Aston Villa, who we have seen compete at the highest levels across the last couple of years. And yes, Marcus Rashford has gone. Yes, Asensio has gone end of loan. But I think they had their burst and dipped, both of them, back end of last season. If they made Champions League, would you have signed either? I'm not so sure that I would have done. So you've still got Watkins. You've still got some really talented central midfielders. I think Jacob Ramsey is leaving the club, which goes to show how strong they are in central midfield. With people like Morgan Rogers, he was never going to displace Morgan Rogers. So that sort of makes sense. And defensively too, still got 𝐿𝐵𝗲𝗀 Quansah, still got Tyrone Mings, still got Luca Digne. I mean, good players. I think the only thing they might suffer on is a lack of new energy. But if that isn't there in this first game, then I'd make them favourites to win it. And I do think a couple of signings are going to come in. In terms of Newcastle, they are now making some moves in the transfer market. I think that the saga of Alexander Isak, which reportedly has been going on since maybe April or May, but it's been really public information for the last few weeks. I think that is a massive distraction from what they are continuing to build. I think Elanga makes a lot of sense, and it annoys me a bit, the Isak thing. Well, in lots of ways it annoys me. But it annoys me that the front three of Anthony Gordon, Alexander Isak, and Anthony Elanga sounded great, actually. I was really looking forward to seeing that. Now, I don't know if we are going to see that. And it would mean Gordon's going to be, central striker maybe this weekend, and Barnes goes on the left. We'll see how that plays out. But to not have Isak, it's catastrophic. I mean, there's no other way of putting it for Newcastle. He is the difference between Champions League and not Champions League. He is the difference between winning the Carabao Cup and not winning the Carabao Cup. He is the closest thing Newcastle have to a world-class player. I don't think I'd put him in that category, but I think he is just below and is on his way to making that level. And so to lose him, which I think they probably will in this transfer window, we'll see how it plays out. But to lose him, I don't think there's anyone who could come in now who could replace him. And of course, not the player he was, but Callum Wilson, who backed up Isak for a couple of years, has now gone to West Ham, left the clubs. There's no one really at central striker. And then goalkeeper as well. You know, they've brought in Aaron Ramsdale to replace 𝗵𝗵𝗀 to sit on the bench, and that's great. At times when Nick Pope is injured. But again, is it a sexy signing? Is it the kind of thing you want to do to bring in Southampton's lone goalkeeper at number 2 and Anthony Elanga for Forest? Is that enough for Newcastle at this point? I think 𝗵𝗲𝗀𝐻 is done at the moment, but he's not going to play this weekend for Milan. So look, I think that there is potential at Newcastle, but right now it all feels so miserable. And I think that could potentially bleed into this game. The loss of Isak is catastrophic. I think the midfield still remains strong, which are Linton and Bruno and all those guys. But I still think that they do need that central striker. So without that going into this game, I would make Aston Villa favourites, as do the bookies, understandably. So top tip is Villa win at 2.2. In terms of how they win it, I think Ollie Watkins anytime at 2.63 is something I'll be doing every week, as I've done for the last 3 years, because it's paid out so many times. And then I think look at how this game is going to go. If I just go back to last season, I can't tell you what the kind of recent form is, but Villa come out of the blocks absolutely firing. So take them to win the first half, the second half to be a draw. That comes in at a really, really healthy 13. So it's a bit wild. But if you follow the patterns of last season with Villa, that is not unlikely. That came in a few times that last season. And then, as ever, lovely group bet, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 for Aston Villa. comes in at 5. So some really decent Villa prices there.
Well, Newcastle were chasing Benjamin Sesko also during the summer, and surprisingly, he chose a non-European team, or not playing in Europe. Of course, Man United is still part of Europe, but not playing in Europe. We were surprised. So now they have a big problem with the number 9. Even Ollie Watkins was linked to Newcastle. So a lot of rumors, a lot to say yet in the summer transfer window. Two teams that should be, I would say, similar along the season, Aston Villa and Newcastle, especially with Newcastle playing in the Champions League. Next to, also, I guess we should expect them to be between number 6, number 10. I'm talking about Brighton and Fulham. More changes in the Brighton squad, selling 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗀 with a good amount of money to Chelsea, Estupiñán to Milan.
Yeah, that's some of the sales.
To Roma. Now they have a new number for Fulham. Yeah, so a lot of sales for Brighton. Fulham, the opposite, Tom. Same with Marco Silva. Not many changes in the squad.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing you said was really interesting. Do I think they'll finish between 6th and 10th? And I don't think either of these teams will, actually. I mean, maybe Brighton more than Fulham. I've got doubts about Fulham. They've spent £0 so far in the transfer window and players have gone. So I've got some concerns about them at the moment. Plus, Marco Silva, last year with his contract, he's ready for his blow-up now when he's moved to Saudi. He wants his money. And I think it's his last year at Fulham. But let's start with Brighton. Look, I think the players you mentioned are really, really significant. And the thing about Brighton, we do it all the time. I did this last year and the year before. You think to yourself, they've sold some really significant players here. Like the year before it was Caicedo. This year it's 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗀. And Estupiñán you mentioned. And you're a bit like, okay, well, that's it. They've finally lost the quality players that are going to see them fall down the ladder and blah, blah, blah. And you find out that some bloke you never heard of is amazing. And that may well happen again, right? But I know Tommy Watson from Sunderland. He's a good player. I don't think he comes in and is a sort of Caicedo level player or whatever. Some of the others I don't know much about as yet beyond reading their bio. So we'll see how they get on. But I think the loss of 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗀 is huge. Absolutely huge. And you're asking Danny Welbeck to have another big season. And look, he keeps on doing it. Eventually he won't, but maybe he will again this season. But I think losing 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗀 is huge. I think losing Estupiñán is really significant. I think that there's some talk that one or two others might go. At some point, this will stop. But whether it's this season, we'll find out together. We'll find out if the new signings gel. I think the manager came in, did a pretty good job last season. Certainly after the thrashing they took at Forest, they just sort of turned the season around, Brighton, and had a respectable finish. But no higher than, I think 10th will be the very best Brighton will be able to do this season, unless the new signings end up being as spectacular as they were previously. I'll reserve some judgment on that till we get further down in the line. In terms of Fulham, I think that there's every chance that Rodrigo Munoz is going to leaving Raul Jimenez as the only striker. Someone's going to come in. There's talk of Kevin coming in, but that's not done as yet, but we'll see how that goes. But essentially, it's as you were from last season. And last season had some really good points, but it also had some pretty middling points as well. I don't think Fulham will get drawn into a sort of relegation battle because I think the bottom 3 plus one or two others are behind them. But I'd be stunned if Fulham got anywhere near the top half this season. I think that 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝗿 had an amazing campaign last season. I hope it continues, but across his 10-year sort of top-flight career, one incredible season does not give me the hope there's going to be an ongoing 12-month consistency out of him. We'll see. I hope it does. Emile Smith-Rowe came in last season, looked good, and then sort of faded away and looks a bit overweight when he's come back to the start of the new season. We'll see how that plays out. And defensively too, I like Anthony Robinson. He's a good player, but he's not getting his move to Liverpool for a reason. I think he sort of found his level, and I wonder, defensively, he gets found out a little bit. I like the goalkeeper, Leno, but again, not at the top level. I think there's a reason for that as well. So, look, I don't know about Fulham. I think they might struggle. I think they might struggle this season. I think there's been some outstanding performances at Fulham across the last couple of years. But I think without some reinforcement, without some fresh blood, without some fresh energy in central midfield, without someone to compete with Raul Jimenez at central striker, if Rodrigo Munoz does go, a little bit of variety on the wings. Again, they're looking at Adama Traore from the bench for the last 20. Are we still doing that? I don't know. So, again, proof will be in the pudding here, but I think both these teams look undercooked going into the first weekend, with Brighton making significant sales and Fulham signing no one significant. Absolutely screams draw at 3.75, I've got to say. Absolutely screams it. I think two teams very well coached. You've got to say that. very well coached defensively. And I think there'll be a caution-first atmosphere from both. If there is to be a winner, expect a low score. So go under 2.5. Take Brighton, sure, if you pick a winner as the home team. But I think 0-0, 1-1, screams it, under 2.5 goals. Both teams to finish somewhere between 10th and 14th.
Okay, we have 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 going for both teams to score and over 2.5 goals, and Mills going for Brighton, by the way. Fulham to get relegated. Odds are 8.0. Big favorites, Burnley, Sunderland, especially those two. 1.25 only Burnley to get relegated. Sunderland 1.35. Leeds is third, 2.1. And then it's a huge gap because next in the list are Brentford and Wolves with 4. So the bookies expect the 3 same teams that got promoted to get relegated. And now it's time to talk about one of these teams. Have you watched Sunderland Till I Die, Tom?
I did watch one of the episodes, but it made me want to go for a nice walk in the rain. So I didn't watch any more of them. It was very depressing.
Well, we have Sunderland back in the Premier League. I had a boss who was a big Sunderland fan, actually. Oh. And I like the boss, and somehow I like Sunderland. I don't know. I didn't watch the series, but I used to like when Giaccherini was playing, for instance.
Oh.
In Sunderland. And well, now, a long time ago, and now they are back to the Premier League. I'm happy to see them back. 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶 is the manager, and they've had a busy summer. Of course, we know that Jude Bellingham is or went to Borussia Dortmund. Also, they sold Tom Watson for a pretty good amount of money, but they signed also some players, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶, Adingra, Enzo Lefi, 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶, all spending a lot of money, Tom. And now we have your West Ham. Tell me about your feelings having Graham Potter for the first time working from the beginning, of course, after a bad season. Last one, half season bad for 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗶, half season bad for Graham Potter. And we saw as the big signing 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗀 from Nice.
Yeah. Let's start with Sunderland, because I think that they are, to talk about your old boss for a minute, like if you are going to go to a Premier League game or an English football ground, if you want to go to the Northeast, right, which, you come to England, you probably go London first or maybe Manchester. But if you go to Newcastle or you go to Sunderland, go to the area, their games are just like Newcastle games, for those that don't have the frame of reference. The crowd are incredible. The stadium is massive. The joy of being back in the Premier League is going to be incredible going into this game. And you saw a bit of that at the playoff final as well with the Watson goal and the way they got up. Of course, as you mentioned, Watson now sold to Brighton. So, like an incredible club. And they have a great story. And they are so, you get it around the world a lot, not everywhere in like London or whatever. There's lots of teams. But there's one city, one club, and everyone you meet supports that team. And they want that team to do well. And the team are doing well, as you saw in the documentary, if you did watch it. Anyone watching, when the team are doing well, everyone's happy. When the team are doing bad, it feels like the town is unhappy or the city is unhappy. And so, it is a bit like that, cliche as it seems. And that's certainly the experience I've had from people I, live in Newcastle or live in similar places. So, but I think losing Bellingham and losing Watson are significant. I think Habib Diarra's coming in central midfield to replace the energy of Joe Bellingham. We'll see how that works out. Enzo Lefi has come in to replace a bit more of the creativity, I guess, that Watson sort of brought to them. They're different positions. Simon Adingra maybe replace him directly on left wing. I'm not quite sure what the formation is going to be yet. But look, I think that's 3 really sensible signings. I've never seen, I think 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗶 is the other one they brought in the right wing. I've not seen him, so I don't know. But the other 3 I think are quite good. And Simon Adingra was that kind of Brighton guy that we didn't know about 2 years ago that suddenly played in their first game. We were like, oh, well, they've done it again. So, look, I think they made some sensible signings, and I think they made a lot of signings. I think maybe 11 or so they've made at this point, and there's more to come. But I still don't quite see a Premier League team there. We will see in the first couple of weeks whether this group can be gelled quickly by a good coach, but a young coach and an experienced coach. He's going to put Granit Xhaka, who's the kind of lesser money signing, if you like, in central midfield, but the most experience, will captain the team. In midfield with Diarra and Adingra, and that's a whole new midfield. Is it going to work? Are they going to be able to make that work in the Premier League? I'm not convinced at the moment. Why? How could I be convinced? I've never seen them. In terms of defence, I think that there's a real lack of top-level experience across that back line. People like Dan Ballard, a good player, but we'll see if he can cut it in the Premier League. And then who's going to score the 10, 12 goals to keep him in the division? At the moment, there's no one in that front group that I would say, yes, they are going to get the 10+ goals that are going to give them a chance. So I don't know much about 𝗷𝗶𝐿, who's coming from Chelsea. We barely saw him play. He was injured a lot when he could have had his opportunity, and that's why he's been sort of loaned out. 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸 has been good in the past in terms of youth level football. I don't know how good he's going to be. He's 22, 23 now. So look, I think a lot to prove with Sunderland, and they've got to hit the ground running. And if they don't, if they lose 3 of the opening 5, I think we call it already and say they're relegated, because you've got to win some games in the opening weeks. So when the slog begins in December, January, February, if you've not already got 20 points or so, you're going to really, really struggle. I'd personally, looking at the squads, think they're the most likely to go down of the 3. Other people have got the other way around. I think that squad with their inexperienced manager, the most likely. But we'll see as it plays out. I hope not for Sunderland fans, right? I don't care who goes down. As long as it's not West Ham, of course, who, like, I think last season, the first half was a nightmare. I think the second half, I think the big issue was how boring it was. And I think that sort of Graham Potter, in a pressure-free environment, came in at West Ham and sort of saw them through to the end. There were a couple of impressive results across his sort of very few wins, but some really bad performances. Anyone who went to West Ham second half of last season, as I did, you are really regretting your life choices watching this team. I think he's now sort of settled on what the team's going to be. It's going to look very similar to a kind of Thomas Frank Brentford. You saw a bit of the Spurs formation on Wednesday in the Super Cup. It's going to be 3 centre-halves. It's going to be 2 wing-backs that also play midfield. It's going to be 2 central midfielders, and there'll be a number 10 and 2 strikers. And I think a lot of that is put together quite well for West Ham when people are fit. Füllkrug looks thin. He looks thin. He looks fit. He's looked very, very sharp in pre-season, which is not the story of last season where he got injured twice and we barely saw him. 𝗀𝗏𝗿𝗏, I think, is up there with some of the best players in the division. In terms of right wingers, I'd go Salah, Saka, and then Bowen in the league. I think he's that good. I think he's an outstanding player, and West Ham have done very well to keep hold of him. wan-Bissaka is good. Malik Diouf is good on the left. The rest of the team, and the goalkeeper's good. Hermansen from Leicester, I think it's a very shrewd signing. Areola had passed his best. Fabianski's gone. The rest of the team is where I have some concerns. You mentioned Jean-Claude Todibo. They confirmed his loan and had to bring him in. I think if they hadn't agreed to sign him last summer, they would not have signed him. He was useless last season, Todibo. He looked fat and slow and uninterested and couldn't finish 90 minutes. You don't need that from your centre-half. 𝗀𝗏𝗄 has come back. He was at West Ham before, on loan to Betis last season. Did very good last season. Was a Sociedad, actually, sorry. But was really, really good. And then has come back, and Graham Potter likes him. He's given the number 5 shirt, and he's going to play. Max Kilman can't defend, but he's the centre-half. So issues there. And the big issue is that they kept getting run through in central midfield. They have not brought in the central midfielder, which was the most important purchase this summer. And the main reason is they've not been able to sell people. Apart from Kudus, who they wanted to go, they can't sell Edson Alvarez. They can't sell James Ward-Prowse. They can't sell Guido Rodriguez because they've all been so crap. So you have to get people out before you can bring people in. I know people don't want to hear that, but that's what you have to do as a football club. And they cannot sell those players. So they've got to find a balance between Paqueta and Souček and another player, which I think might be the academy product, Dan Potts, whose dad, Steve, used to be West Ham captain in the early 90s. So, look, I think that's the big issue. If they sort the energy in midfield, I think West Ham could have a really good season because the rest of it has actually got quite a good balance. I think they're a dominant centre-half and an energetic central midfielder away from the top 10 finish. And even without that, I still think this West Ham team, if Bowen is fit and Füllkrug is fit, should finish top 10. And I think they should win this game. The only reason I'm going to bet against it is because it's Sunderland's first game back in the Premier League. Absolutely screams draw at 3.5. I'd snatch your hand off for that. Screams 1-1, frankly. So a 6.5 for a 1-1 draw. Correct score is always a little bit dangerous. So go draw at under 2.5. But if you really fancy being brave, 1-1 at 6.5 is quite nice. Otherwise, West Ham are the favourites. So take them to win. The odds are quite nice for a up and down West Ham win. 2.3, 2.4, that sort of number. And 𝗀𝗏𝗿𝗏 is the outstanding player on the field. Anytime goal scorer for 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏. Ended the season on a great run of form. Throw that in as well. You'll make some money. But I think it screams draw and suddenly get a big welcome to the Premier League goal moment.
Well, Viper agrees with you. Score draw 1-1. Actually, my boss promised me to bring me to the Stadium of Light. He never did, Tom. Oh. So also from that side, I think I missed a big opportunity to see the Stadium of Light and Sunderland. He brought me though to Newcastle and enjoyed the nightlife in Newcastle or Edinburgh, even better Edinburgh, I admit. Let's talk about Tottenham. Tom, Tottenham Burnley is the next game. We saw Spurs doing the Spurs thing on Wednesday, losing the European Super Cup when they had it already in their fingers, but at the end, 2 late goals from PSG, also in the penalty shootout. Vitinha missed first, but Tottenham couldn't lift the trophies. A new Tottenham, as we all know, 𝗛𝗲𝗿𝗀 is gone. The season was absolutely crap in the Premier League, but hey, they lift a trophy, the Europa League, so somehow they are going to play Champions League also this season. New manager, Thomas Frank. We are not going to see Son after so many seasons. He's gone to America to enjoy life and the sunshine. And Tom, how do you see this Tottenham? A lot of question marks, I guess. In the Premier League, you cannot do worse than last year.
No, I think they'll get better in the league. I think they have a better coach this year in Thomas Frank than 𝗛𝗲𝗿𝗀, who obviously was and is an amazing cup manager, but doesn't have the consistency to manage a team across a league season. I think that's been proven across his 2 years at Spurs. Thomas Frank, huge step up for him from Brentford, who there's no pressure at Brentford, right? What he achieved there was fantastic. But if they had gone down, which they never looked like doing, by the way, but if they had, he would have kept his job. It all would have been fine. You know, there was just no pressure there at all to really do anything, which I think helped him to a degree. At Spurs, it ain't like that, as 𝗛𝗲𝗿𝗀 has found out. You can win the Europa League and still get sacked. So I think you saw the formation on Wednesday, what it's going to be. I think you saw the way they're going to set up. I think they're going to be really strong through the centre of the field. I think 𝗀𝗏𝗏 is expired signing in central midfield. I think it will get the best out of people like Pape Sarr. If he's allowed to play again, 𝗵𝗔𝗄, I think he'll excel in this midfield alongside 𝗏𝗏𝗏 because they can indulge themselves a bit more going forward. I do think the loss of Maddison is significant. So I think it's back into the transfer market. They have to go for someone who had something a little bit different, a bit of magic. People are saying, well, isn't Mo Kudus that player? Look, Mo Kudus is one of the most talented individual footballers that I've seen. He's not a good team player. He doesn't focus for an entire game and he can get it disinterested at any moment. Getting him off the ball is almost impossible. But his numbers at West Ham, and you might say, oh, it's West Ham. Yeah, because their star player wasn't doing it, right? He was the star player and he wasn't really scoring very much and he wasn't assisting very much and he wasn't contributing very much. And so it's a huge test for Mo Kudus. If he wants to be a top player, wants to be a Champions League player, I've got my doubts about that. You've got to do it here at Tottenham. And the potential of a front three of Solanke, Kudus and another in that group, could be Brennan Johnson, could be Dejan Kulusevski. We kind of see how that group goes and the kind of setup of the whole thing. But Kudus in a 2 doesn't work. So you've got to make it a 3. But the formation Thomas Frank wants to be a 2. So what, Kudus goes to 10? I don't think he can play 10. So look, we'll see how that plays out. But I'm not wildly impressed by the signing of Mo Kudus. I don't think Matthias Tell did anything on loan from Bayern. So I'm surprised they brought him in permanently. I don't think it was something they had to do, an obligation. But I'd have to double check that. But I think if it's a option to do that, I think they've chosen the wrong option, frankly. So look, a bit undercooked still, and I think the loss of Maddison's significant. But I think they've got a better coach this season. In terms of Burnley, I feel sorry for them. Because last season, the way they got promoted was being the worst team in the world to watch, but you couldn't score against them. And as good as the defenders were last season, as good as the defence was last season, a lot of that was down to James Trafford and how brilliant he was in goal. And he's now gone to sit on the bench at Man City. So that's a drag. CJ Egan-Riley has gone to, I think it's Marseille. He was, I think, their best central defender. And Josh Brownhill was, I think, top scorer from central midfield. And he's chosen just to leave as opposed to play for Burnley in the Premier League. So I'd be worried about that if I was Burnley. Some of the signings are fine. 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀 and 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀. Yeah, okay. I think they're good players if you want to finish 19th. I think that's fine. Don't know much about 𝗪𝗀𝗻 Esteve as yet. We'll find out how he gets on in the Premier League at this level. But look, I think they look like a championship squad. They have a manager who has failed repeatedly in the Premier League. And I think they will struggle. I think they'll go down. And I think that Scott Parker will be sacked by January. We'll see how it plays out. And they lose this game. I know Tottenham had a tough one on Wednesday to take, but I still think they have enough strength and they have enough depth and rotation to win this particular game. So Spurs win up and down at 1.41. Take that. I think it'll be tight because I still think Burnley are going to be well organised defensively despite the changes they have made. But, I mean, Kyle Walker is now the Spurs right back. So, the Burnley right back. So I think Spurs will be attacking him all game because he has totally gone at the top level. That's a poor signing, I think, in terms of ability. Good in terms of leadership, I guess. But, just hire a mascot for less money. So, look, Spurs win. Look at the under. Go under 2.5 goals at 3.75. I think that because of Wednesday and the way Burnley play. But then I wouldn't be shocked if Spurs went on to win this by 4-0. But be conservative. Go under 2.5 because 3.75 good odds.
Spurs handicap -1 for Jack Rayner. Next game is Wolves Man City. A lot of question marks, I could say, around Man City. I could listen. A lot of people not being very optimistic with the market and with Man City and with Rodri's recovery. We are seeing how Man City are trying to get rid of Grealish, of Savinho. As we know, De Bruyne left, and some smart moves, I would say. Reinders, 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐻, and who knows if Rodrigo, or the Brazilian, is coming. But some question marks about the defense, about the goalkeeper, perhaps Donnarumma is coming, and also about, of course, Pep Guardiola staying one season more again, if he's able to motivate his player after the bad season they had last year. In front of them, Tom, Wolves, with Vitor Pereira as a manager. They sold their best player, especially Matheus Cunha. What do you expect in this game? What do you expect, especially about Man City? Because in the last years, they were the favorites for the trophy, but not this season.
Well, let's start with Wolves, because you mentioned the sale of Matheus Cunha, which is obviously very significant, but also the sale of Ryan Ait-Nouri is significant as well to Manchester City. I think that he had been so pivotal to Wolves in so many crucial moments in games, getting them up the field and scoring goals and being creative from that kind of left wing back role. So to lose both of them in the same summer is a real drag for Wolves. And Jurgen Strand Larsen was great last season. He's been confirmed as a permanent signing. The other guys, I have concerns about players that come to the Premier League from Brazil and come to the Premier League from Spain. And a lot of that is because some of them really step up and are spectacular, and some of them fall by the wayside very, very fast. I don't think there's very many middle ground players that come from those two leagues. They're either spectacular or crap, and that's about it. And you're asking Lopez and you're asking Arias to come in and be outstanding from day one, because they are essentially replacing the two best players who have left the club. And that may well happen. I don't know. Again, I know their bios, I know their names, I know their fees, but I've not got to see them up front as yet. But if one of them doesn't hit it or they both don't hit it, I'd be concerned about Wolverhampton Wanderers, because those two players were so crucial. I think defensively, they still look like they need some reinforcement. I'd be concerned. I think 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗏 came in January. I think sometimes looked good, sometimes looked bad. I think the goalkeeper Sarr had some dodgy moments last season. I think you're relying on someone like 𝗏𝗏𝗏 to step up, who was a good player last season, but I'm not sure what sort of player he is as yet. Marshall 𝗏𝗏𝗏, is he a 10? Is he an 8? I'm not sure. And I think it maybe worked in the manager's more fluid formation. And again, the manager, he is a powder keg. And for all of the points and pints thing they did last season to endear himself to supporters, that can turn very quickly if you start losing games. And I am struggling at the moment to justify Wolves winning too many games in the Premier League this season. I like people like Andre and João Gomes in central midfield. I think they're good players, but are they basically the same player? And then 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has to do all the running, because those two guys are kind of deep block, creative Michael Carrick types. I don't know. I've got doubts about how the Wolves midfield works in the Premier League. And I think losing Matheus Cunha and Ryan Ait-Nouri, difference makers, is really, really significant. For Man City, I take your point on them not being favourites per se. And I think the loss of Kevin De Bruyne was keenly felt last season when he was still at the club, never mind this season. But I still think, on average, the most expensively assembled squad in the league, the highest value squad in the league. They have Erling Haaland. Oscar Bob is back. I think that Ryan 𝐿𝐴 from Lyon is a really interesting signing. He's been looking for his sort of place to indulge for a long time, and I think this might be it. Maybe he is going to be the De Bruyne replacement. We will see, not directly, but indirectly. I still have my concerns about central midfield with City. There's going to be no Rodri this weekend. And no Rodri for maybe the first month, last I read. They haven't got anyone yet to do that role. Still, Nico Gonzalez came in, didn't do it, wasn't good enough to play there, and didn't give them the defensive cover that was required. Tierney Reinders from Milan, I think, is a good player, but he's a different sort of player. He's not a kind of holder in the way Rodri is. He's more like the 𝐿𝐵𝐴𝐺 replacement in a way, or the Gundogan replacement potentially. So, look, I think the midfield is still a problem without Rodri. Of course it is. Rodri's the best player in the world. Certainly best player in Europe when he got injured. So that's an issue. And defensively, I think I'd be concerned about the fact that 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐺𝐵𝐴𝐺 and Ryan Aït-Nouri basically play in the same position, like attacking from the left, as does Nico O'Reilly, who was good back into last season. Did they need Ryan Aït-Nouri? Does that mean 𝐵𝑎𝑟diol's going back into the back three or back two? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what that balance is at the moment. So we'll see how that plays out. Plus, they've signed James Trafford. I assume Ederson's still the number one, but now they're being linked, as we speak, to Gigi Donnarumma from PSG. So good luck with that if you're James Trafford. Back to Man City, going to be maybe England's number one in the future, and then sitting on the bench behind Donnarumma. We'll see how it plays out. So look, I think there are still things to fix, but these are high-end problems, and these are really good players. And if you can have a front three maybe this weekend of, I don't know, Haaland, Doku, and 𝗀𝗏𝗀 potentially as a front three, they win this game, and they're going to finish top three. And if it really works, they could win the league. Not my favourites at the moment, but they're going to be top three at least. So take the Man City win here, obviously, at 1.48. You have to take that. As I mentioned, I got real concerns about the Wolves' defence. I think City will score a few goals here. So Man City win an over 2.5 goal. Still a pretty conservative 2.1. I wouldn't go more adventurous than that at this moment in time. I think the odds might get better for City when they lose a couple of games. Nice little group bet at W money. 1-0, 2-0, or 3-0 is 3. And then I like this game. I'm thinking back to I went to Man City. I think it was Man City West Ham a couple of years ago, opening day. First half was very tight. I think Wolves will sit very deep and City might struggle. But when that first goal goes in, I think the floodgates open. Draw at halftime. Man City win by full time, 4.5.
Man City to win and over 2.5 goals. Man City -1 is a good value, a great signing. According to David, for Man City, signing Reinders. I completely agree. He can be a really good player in the Premier League as well as he is for the Netherlands and for Milan. Next game is Chelsea-Crystal Palace. Great game. This one after seeing Crystal Palace lifting the trophy, the Community Shield, after winning the FA Cup. So great end of the season, great start of this one, keeping Mateta so far in the team. So great job for Oliver Glasner, and for Chelsea, sold out. I guess they are, or they should be, top 4 this season, but there is a caveat, of course, how the FIFA Club World Cup is going to affect them, especially in these first games, because they didn't have any preseason, and also playing in the Champions League. And last season they could rest playing in the conference, but it's not going to be the case of this season. And then, Tom, I leave it for you, the list of signings and of sales, because of course it's very long with Chelsea. I just want to highlight João Felix. Tom, I'm sure we are going to forget about this player very soon, so that's why I bring it up, because how you can waste your career in this way.
No. Well, João Felix, I mean, he's gone to Saudi now, right? I think it's Al Hilal, I think is where he was. I think Al Nassr, I can't remember which one, but like one of them. And like, yeah, well, he's always going to go to Saudi, won't he, João Felix? This is what happens. It's a great lesson, actually, for a lot of players. If you just want to make as much money as possible, do what João Felix has done. And that's fine. And make as much money as possible. God bless you. I back you on that. If you want to have a good career, do the exact opposite of what João Felix has done at every stage of his career. Keeps going to clubs that don't want him, don't need him, wouldn't take the step down the ladder to a club where he could have had the team built around him. I don't get the sense that he even likes football at this point. And, you know, that's why you go to Saudi, I guess. Anyway, look, I think your point on Chelsea is really, really good in that they're going to play so many more competitive games this season. And, like, I went to the Leverkusen game on Friday at Stamford Bridge. I didn't go to the Milan game a couple of days later. But what was so clear is they're a couple of weeks ahead of Leverkusen in terms of pre-season, or not pre-season, right? Because they'd just come off the Club World Cup and they look so sharp. They've been in active football all summer, which they, of course, have. And I think they might start the season really, really well. I really fancy them in this game. I really fancy Chelsea across the first 5 to 10 weeks of this season. But I think then you're going to see a massive drop. You're going to see a massive drop because they have not stopped playing since July last season, all the way through, then into the Club World Cup, which of course they won. They're then going to add Champions League on to that from, I think, September 15th is when the first Champions League week. Of course, you have 8 rounds of the Champions League now as well. Plus going to be Carabao Cup. Then the FA Cup's going to come around. They have a gargantuan squad. But weirdly, despite the fact it's gargantuan and the sheer amount of players they've signed, they're still short in some key positions. Look, let's just go through it briefly. I think 𝐬𝐿 is brilliant as an inspired signing. I think he is a proper Chelsea striker. He's a real dirtbag of a forward. Like, he'll kick you, he'll elbow you, he'll score a hat-trick. He is Diego Costa. I think he's absolutely fantastic. He'll be a great signing. I like 𝐿𝐵𝗏. I think the balance between them two is going to be really interesting. Can they play together? Will they replace each other? But he's sort of similar, a less scumbag version of 𝐬𝐿. 𝗛𝗏𝗏 on the wing from Palmeiras. I saw him for the first time on Friday. I think he looks really talented. You add someone like Jamie Gittins to that group. That also includes Pedro Neto. I think it's fantastic. I think they're sorted for attackers. I think that front line looks really, really good. And 𝐿𝐿 is still there, but I think he'll probably go. Maybe by the time people watch this. Midfield, not great depth, but I think Lavia, Caicedo, Enzo, Andre Santos, and another, probably Dario Asugo, I guess, will be in that group, as opposed to being loaned out or whatever. Really strong. Love that. Cole Palmer as a number 10 is an outstanding footballer. Play him wherever you want and he'll win you games. I think he is a world-class player, Cole Palmer. I really do. I think he's incredible. You can play for anyone. I think you can play for Chelsea, you play for Man City, you play for Real Madrid, play for Barcelona. He is astonishingly good, Cole Palmer. And I think we're seeing that. Even when he had a dip last season, he still posted really, really good numbers. The season before, he's posting Salah-level numbers of goals and assists. I think he's outstanding. The rest of it is a problem. Defense a problem. Goalkeeper's a problem. All 3 keepers ain't good. Sanchez, Jorgensen, and I think the other one is Slanina, the American. That's not top level. I'm amazed that Donnarumma's on the market and they're not going for him, all guns blazing. If they did that, we're having a different conversation. I think losing Levi Colwill to injury is a huge blow. That leaves you Tosin, the returning Wesley Fofana, Trevor Chalobah. Again, I think they're good, not top level. We're talking winning the Premier League here. I don't think they're top level. Reece James can't stay fit. I think 𝐿𝐿 is probably world-class, actually. I'd put him in. I think he's fine. But the others, I wobble on the defence for Chelsea and wobble on the goalkeeper, and that might cost them. And the lack of defensive depth at the moment may well cost them as the season goes on. But they're going to start the season all guns blazing. In terms of Palace, I think Mark Gay's going to stay, which is great news for the fans. Bad news for the accountants, but great news for the fans because it means the back 3 of Richards, 𝐿𝐴, and Gay stays. Outstanding. Henderson, outstanding. Wharton, outstanding. Eze, outstanding. Mateta, outstanding. Other good players in that group, but you've got 7 outstanding players. And I think under this manager, with that small group, they could really have a great season here, Crystal Palace. And they're in the Conference League. And even though they're not Chelsea, if they win the qualifier next week or the week after, they could make the semi-finals, the final, win the Conference League. Might need a couple more players to do that. But I think that even with rotation, with like Will Hughes or 𝗛𝗏𝗏 or whatever, they could have a good enough team to at least get out of the group and then really start to challenge in the Conference League second half of the season. It's a small squad, but really talented. So look, I think Palace have a good season. I think Palace, if they keep those players I mentioned, will finish top 10 at least. And I think they'll get to, if they get out of the qualifier, because it's early in the season, that's my only doubt, they'll get to at least quarterfinals of the Conference League. Spectacular season for Crystal Palace. But in this game, go for Chelsea because they are going to be so sharp off the back of the Club World Cup. Win, up and down, take that. I think we'll score a couple of goals as well. Offensively looking very, very strong, Chelsea. Chelsea minus 1.5 handicap. The first really good one I can find at 2.5. Maybe even go higher than that. I think there'll be goals in this game. Palmer anytime is 2.5. Double that with a Chelsea win. Really good odds there. Throw in Palmer to assist as well. There's normally good odds on that. And then look at 𝐻𝐿. I used to do Palmer and Jackson. Now I'm going to do Palmer and Pedro every week. Pedro anytime is 2.63. And I hadn't got the odds, forgive me. But if you're looking at yellow cards, I don't usually do this. But I used to do it with João Palhinha and Edson Alvarez. Now do it with 𝐻𝐿. Do 𝐻𝐿 to be booked every week. And you're going to make some money, double it up with something. Because he's a dirtbag in the best possible way. But, you know, Diego Costa style.
Exactly. My mind was going to Diego Costa. Indeed, what a great striker. Crystal Palace Asian handicap plus 1.5 for Millie, for instance. Correct score 3-1 for Omojoma. Chelsea will be too strong. Well, with Chelsea, it's kind of Russian roulette. We never know what is going to happen. Next one is Forest Brentford. Great season, last one for Nottingham Forest, just this close to secure a Champions League spot, but at the end, probably the owner was very angry with Nuno Espíritu Santo, as we saw going into the pitch, but they couldn't make it. They sold 𝐿𝐴ngA, they sold Danilo. Anyway, it was a great season for Nottingham Forest, and let's see what happened with this one. Much more question marks with Brentford, of course, with a new manager, Keith Andrews, replacing Thomas Frank, sold also 𝗵𝗵𝗀, and as I said before, is the favorite number 4 to go down, actually, Brentford.
Yeah, I actually think both these teams will struggle this season. I think Brentford more than Forest, but I've got some concerns about Forest going into the first week, and maybe they will allay those fears in a couple of games. But I think losing 𝐿𝐴ngA is significant. I think of the front group of sort of really exciting attacking wingers they've got, I think he was the most consistent, so losing him is a blow. And look, I think Dan and Doy coming in to potentially replace him more or less from Bologna. Good player, but I think 𝐿𝐴ngA was really important to the best things about Forest last season. So again, got to hit the ground running. We'll see how that plays out. 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 comes in from Botafogo. I think more of a central striker to sort of back up Chris Wood or replace Chris Wood, maybe. We'll see how that plays out. Beyond that, it's kind of as you were. And look, that's not a problem really for Forest. I think defensively in Murillo and Milenkovic and 𝐼𝐸 and Williams and the goalkeeper Siles got a really good back line that remains. I think in 𝗵𝗵𝗏, who they've kept. Thank you, Mr. Marianakis. I think that he's a excellent footballer that was, he's a £70 million player. I think Marianakis was right there. I think that the release clause offer was underneath what his value is. And I think he'll have another spectacular season at Forest this season if he stays the entire way through, and then probably go better than Spurs. Gibbs right. We'll see how it goes, but I think he's great. My only concern is, like, the way Forest play, you could write it now. I could write it now. You know exactly what they're going to do. And I think there was a surprise element, or there's a lack of respect element, or whatever last season from a lot of teams who went to the City ground and played against Forest like they could compete against them. When they then found out they couldn't, Forest already had 50 points. And it was like, oh, okay, we should not have done that. We should have treated them like we're going to Arsenal as opposed to going to Forest. When teams started doing that, Forest started to struggle. They don't have, beyond Gibbs-White, I think a lot of creativity, pizzazz to break down a sort of low block. And if you shut down Gibbs-White, you put a couple of players on him, you're looking for more from Dominguez or Anderson and Hudson-Odoi. And look, maybe you get it. But I think they're lacking a little bit of quality to break down a low block. And I think pacing behind is great if the opposition plays high. If they don't, I think they could be in trouble. I think a lot of Forest games are going to be quite stodgy this season. And you're asking Chris Wood as well to have another spectacular season like last season. Look, maybe he will. Hope he does. But there's some variables there for me that I think there's still a couple of players short in the transfer market. In terms of Brentford, yeah, you can see why people think they're going to struggle. Because first, I think losing Thomas Frank is catastrophic. I think that so much that's been good about Brentford has been built around him, his personality, obviously his tactical acumen, his appeal to bring players in. They're pretty low payers, Brentford. So it's all about selling the club to new players, which he'd obviously done very effectively. They lost Ivan Toney 2 years ago, and they just carried on like nothing had happened. They've now lost Brian 𝗵𝗏𝗏. Can they carry on like nothing's happened? I really don't think that's possible. They've also lost Christian Nørgaard, who's basically played every minute of every game possible since promotion. Huge player, club captain, got to sit on the bench at Arsenal. What does that tell you? And the players they've brought in, I like Kelleher. I think he's good. Beyond that, Jordan Henderson, give me a break. I just don't see that that's a particularly smart signing at this point in his career. Can't get around the field as compared to like Nørgaard. 𝗲𝗏𝗏 wants away, so he won't be playing this weekend. Will he play again for them? I think it's unlikely. Look, defensively, they're still very strong. Think that Nathan Collins is very good. Sepp van den Berg is very good. Christopher 𝐼𝐸 is very good. If your fourth centre-half is Ethan Pinnock, you're in a good position. But offensively, they might struggle. I don't know anything about Keith Andrews as a coach. I know he'd been a kind of lower-level attacking coach. But is he a manager? We'll find out together. But I'd have my concerns going into this weekend. If they can hash out some 0-0 draws in the opening weeks and nick some home wins, I think that'll be good. But they look like they're shorter players to me. So both teams here, I think, are going to have bottom half seasons. I think Forest anywhere from, well, let's say 10th to 14th. But I think Brentford are going to finish somewhere 15th to 18th. And we'll see how that plays out. Forest win this, 2.12. Take that. And then I think it's going to be quite a tight game. You can get Forest win under 2.5 goals, really surprisingly, for 5. That seems too high. So I'd snap your hand off for that. If you feel less brave, Forest under 3.5 is 2.88. But I think low scoring, Forest win, 1-0, 2-0.
All right, Forest double chance for sure. Under 3 goals. Shaw is telling us Mills beast. Forest to win for sure. Jack Rayner. Both teams are going to struggle. I see 1-1 in this game. Well, the last game we have on Sunday is the best game of the weekend. The Man United Arsenal. Has been a tough summer for Man United, trying to get rid of some players with the manager kind of doing things that people don't understand because it's just undervalue your own players. But still, we have Ruben Amorim again in the on Man United's bench. Of course, starting the season for the very first time after struggling a lot in his spell last season. Still, we don't know what is going to happen, for instance, with Garnacho and some signings. For instance, Benjamin Sesko, that some people think he's too young, he hasn't delivered the amount of goals that he should, that perhaps arriving to the Premier League is too early for him, so it's a bit gamble. The Slovenian striker arriving to the Premier League, and on the other hand, Tom, Arsenal, you mentioned at the beginning that is their time to challenge and to win finally the Premier League after being runners-up for the last, 3 years, and they added up Gyökeres finally a number 9, but also, for instance, Zubimendi, great player, 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗀 also, so they have a great squad, Arsenal.
They do, and I think they go into this game as favourites, and I think it has to be their year to win the title, but we'll get to them in a second. Let's start with the home team and Manchester United, because, I think the signings are really smart, and I think that it wasn't maybe the biggest issue at Man United, but, everyone needed replacing, okay? Rasmus Højlund's not done it. 𝐬𝐭𝐴 has not done it. I think 𝐶ESCO is better than those two. And look, he's still potential and he's still not a finished article. I think you're absolutely right there. But I think he has got more potential coming in than those two had coming in. And I think you get Højlund out, you back him up with 𝗍𝗍, and that makes some sense to me. I think Bryan Mbeumo has been brilliant for Brentford for a long, long time. And he's a step up on Garnacho. He's a step up on whatever Marcus Rashford was at the end. That's a smart signing. And I think in Matheus Cunha, he's nuts, but he's a great maverick talent. And I think maybe, man, you need a bit of magic going forward that isn't just from Bruno Fernandes. I think some of the link-up play between Matheus Cunha and Bruno Fernandes could be spectacular this season. So that front four is great. You've got to solve the issue of where Bruno Fernandes plays. But that front four, they're going to do some serious damage in the Premier League this season. So no issues there. The rest of it's a problem. And they haven't addressed it. There is no power in central midfield. Very similar to the West Ham conversation we had, right? Two teams that had pretty similar league seasons last season. Their biggest issue was being run through central midfield. And West Ham didn't fix it. And United haven't fixed it. And they've got to fix it. Both of them got to fix it. You can see why they're linked to 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗄 this week. Have to bring in somebody like that. It's sort of surprising to me they haven't done that earlier. I think that's sort of been my only sort of concern with Man United, that they've spent a lot of money. I know there's a never-ending well of money at Man United, despite what, Jim Ratcliffe says publicly. They can always spend pretty much whatever they want because of their ginormous international appeal. So you've got to solve that. If they solve that, and maybe if you add Donnarumma to that, again, I don't know, but if you add Donnarumma and 𝗵𝗿𝗄 to this team, ask me again when I think they're going to finish. I think there's still issues at the back. But, that is an excellent, maybe 7 or 8 players they would have. At the moment, I think it's a really good front four. And I think there's a couple of other good players in there. But the significant issues have not been solved defensively. And, you talk about power midfields. They're up against Arsenal this weekend. You're going to see if Casemiro, for example, starts. You're going to see him struggle. And we'll see what 𝗵𝗵𝗄 does this year. He could have been that player. Don't know what happened to him last season. Be it injury, who knows? But, once upon a time, he could have been that player, and he sort of faded into insignificance last season. So we'll see how that plays out. In terms of Arsenal, they've done it. All right. How many conversations have we had about get the striker and you're there? Every signing they have made this summer makes sense. Really smart, really good value. They've done it. This is the perfect Arsenal squad. Defense remains fantastic. probably the best defense in the league, the back four. Goalkeeper, Raya, for this team, as good as they're going to get for what the manager wants them to do. In terms of midfield, Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, and Martin Odegaard. Fantastic. That's great. That's really, really good. Bukayo Saka, world class. On the other side, look, maybe it's Noni Madueke. Maybe it's still Martinelli, but they've got some options there. Maybe it's Trossard, who's still at the club. And then 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿. I get that people are a bit like, is he going to be able to hit the ground running? He wasn't great in England last time. Sporting Club de Portugal, it's the 4th or 5th best league in Europe. What does that really tell us? Well, we'll find out. I think he's got all the ability there to go on to be a 20-plus goal striker. And more importantly than that, the difference maker striker. That means the striker who, when it's 0-0 against Fulham with 5 to go, scores the goal that gets them the win when they haven't played well that day. That is why Arsenal have not won the league. It's not volume of goals. It's goals in vital moments, in vital games. This is the strongest Arsenal Mikel Arteta has had. This is win or bust for the Arsenal manager. He has to win the league with this squad. The team is perfect. And with that, I think they win this game. Arsenal at 2.07. I think you have to take that. Then you're looking at some goal scorers in this game. Bukayo Saka is fit, and if he's fit, I put him anytime goal scorer. 3.25 on its own is a bit insane. Double that than Arsenal win. Really good odds there. Victor 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿 on debut, of course, linked with Manchester United. A former Amorim pupil. Got a score in this game, hasn't he, at 2.2? Everything feels like he's going to score. The stars are aligning, so put that in. Arsenal win to 0. I think their defence is always something worth backing at 3.5. Bit daring, that one, because United's front group could be quite good. I always like Arsenal's defence. Group bet 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 was 4. And then don't discount the draw. 0-0 and 1-1 brings you in at 4.5 as a grouper. But I think Arsenal win this 1-0, 2-0, maybe even 3.
Okay, 𝗲𝗵𝗿𝗄 2-1 for Arsenal. Arsenal to win 2-0 for 𝐻𝐴. And we had also some comments on Anna in goal, Arsenal over 1.5 goals. I feel Man United coach Ruben Amorim will be the first one to get sacked this season. This is actually a good bet. It was a bit controversial also, his press conference during the summer, complaining or setting apart his players. Well, and the last game back, the Premier League to Elland Road, Leeds Everton on Monday. Daniel Farke is the manager to stay or to try to keep Leeds safe and stay in the Premier League for some years, although, as I mentioned before, the bookies don't expect that. Again, they've spent a lot of money this summer, as they used to do. And for Everton, Tom, everyone is excited about having Grealish at Liverpool, the city, at Everton. Yeah. So it's going to be great, actually, to see him playing for Everton.
Yeah, it will. I'm looking forward to seeing what Jack Grealish is now, because we haven't really seen him be his maverick self for 3 seasons. Kind of depressing, so I think that's going to be quite fun. Look, I think Leeds, along with Burnley, along with Sunderland, they're all going to struggle. I think that Sunderland made a lot of changes to their squad, and so that could be incredible. I think they're going to struggle. I think Burnley, losing key players, they're going to struggle. And I think Leeds at the moment, they don't have much appeal to players. Sean Longstaff and Anton Stach and Lucas Perry will be the number 1, which will be better than 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿, who I think is not very good in terms of Premier League. So, look, I think there's still a couple of players short. I don't know who's going to score the goals for them. I think the midfield. Longstaff brings Premier League experience, but I don't know if he's a difference maker. Defensively, I think last season, Pascal Struijk in the Premier League this season, who's now captain, previously has struggled. Ethan Ampadu has never really done it in the Premier League. I think it's a championship squad. It's a championship squad with a championship manager. And there was a story doing the rounds in May time after they got promotion. They might consider replacing Daniel Farke because he'd already failed in the Premier League before. I think that was the right thing to have done, and they didn't do it. They've stuck with Farke, as everyone does. And he'll be gone by January. He just isn't a good enough Premier League manager. I think this is not a good enough Premier League squad as yet. And I'm struggling to see right now, looking at this squad, if they went down, who stays in the league? Jack Harrison is back after 2 years on loan at Everton. Never really done much there. Daniel James, 27, 28 years of age now, Daniel James. Is he ever going to make it in the Premier League? It's kind of now or never. Patrick Bamford is persona non grata. I think he's still at the club, but he's not going to play. So that leaves a huge hole in central positions. Is it going to be... Is 𝗀𝗵𝗄 going to be good enough in the Premier League? Again, look, I hope so, right? I don't know. But from what I can see on paper from this team, from what was in the Championship last season, I think they're lacking depth in central midfield. They're missing power in central midfield. Maybe Starch can do that. I don't know. They're missing experience in central defensive and central forward positions. And I think Perry's a better goalkeeper than 𝗿𝗄𝗄. So that's quite smart. So, look, I think they'll struggle. And I think they will struggle for 30 points. We'll see how it plays out. At the moment, I think the squad's going to struggle. I think all 3 promoted squads are going to struggle for 30 points. In terms of Everton, no great change from last season. The players that David Moyes wanted to go are going. 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀'𝘀, 𝗵𝗵𝗀𝗀, one or two others that, yeah, I think it was their time to go. Jack Grealish is exciting. I think that, again, I mentioned earlier on, if we get the Maverick of 2 or 3 seasons ago, we're on for a great season. If we don't, I think we talk about what a flop his career has been. So a lot of pressure on Jack Grealish to be the talismanic figure that the Hill Dickinson Stadium wants in its first season there. It looks incredible, by the way. I can't wait to visit. Tiena Barry is now the striker. Again, it goes to my point from earlier on from Villarreal. You either are amazing if you come from Spain, or you're crap and you get loaned back in January. And there's pretty much no middle ground when it comes to players like this. So I think he could be great. And I think a front three of Ndai, Grealish, and Barry could be really interesting, backed up by Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. That's a good-looking front four. Defensively, it's a David Moyes team, so we expect them to be strong, and we've seen that with Jordan Pickford, who's great, 𝗍𝗂, who's great, O'Brien, who's great, Branthwaite, who's great. I think there's a real chance Everton have a solid, unspectacular season and finish 10th, maybe 9th, and I think maybe just a couple of other silky players away in central midfield from even doing better than that. So, look, in this game, Everton win, 2.95. Got to take that. They're a Premier League team, and Leeds aren't. I think Leeds will struggle to score. I think Everton will defend well, and they'll win this by 1 or 2 goals to nil. Everton win to nil. I'll take 1-0 at 8.5.
All right. Well, someone was saying the classical Everton win 1-0 and go home. Indeed, as you are mentioning here, 8.5 correct score. 2-1 for the away team for 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, most boring game of the weekend. I kind of agree, at least on paper. Well, 1 hour and 7 minutes. Tom, you wanted to talk to someone, and you've analyzed thoroughly all the teams, all the games. Remember, guys, of course, this new season, we still have our tipster competitions going on, so feel free to participate. It's free, actually, so you just have to sign up at the Oddspedia website. You can see now on the screen how to do it, and just participate in the monthly, in the yearly, or in Rivals, where you can create your own tipster competitions with your friends. Again, for free, and even you can win some cash prizes. Tom, let's wrap up this one with your safe bet.
Safe bet is the first game of the weekend. Liverpool, the champions, beat a beleaguered-looking Bournemouth who have sold their entire defence. They'll win that. It's 1.25.
Thanks, Tom. You are the man. Steve from Lynn is telling you, Tom.
They aren't going to be this long every week, okay? It's the season preview episode. Next week's half an hour, so enjoy this.
Exactly. Please, please. And because we don't pay double, we don't get paid double, actually, for doing this long video, I must admit.
I've got to go. Tom, this was far too long.
Your ACCA?
ACCA, right. So I've got a 4-team ACCA for you, right? Fourfold. Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. But if you throw Villa in there as well to beat Newcastle, it comes in at a really solid 7.7. If you take Villa out, it's 3.5. But chuck Villa in, and those are great odds for your opening weekend.
Ambitious to start this Premier League. Well, Tom, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Let's enjoy Premier League again. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you soon.